Würzburg, Bavaria. The evening of a cold week in late 1895. Inside the Physical Institute on Pleitering, a 50-year-old professor is working alone. His name is Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, director of the institute, a careful and private man who distrusts assistants in his laboratory and prefers the quiet of his own hands. Tonight the building is nearly empty. His wife, Anna Bertha, waits for him at home, holding a dinner that will go cold. Röntgen is not a showman. Born in 1845 in the Rhineland, expelled from technical school in Utrecht over a caricature he did not draw, he clawed his way into physics without a formal diploma, earning his doctorate at Zurich and building a reputation on precision rather than flash. He measures, he repeats, he publishes, only when certain. At 49, he is respected across German physics, but famous nowhere. A specialist in gases, crystals, and the strange discharges of electrified glass. The room around him is a cathedral of Victorian apparatus. Induction coils, batteries, glass tubes emptied of nearly all their air, rubber hoses snake toward a vacuum pump. On the bench sits the object that has consumed his attention for weeks. A sealed cathode-ray tube, the kind physicists across Europe are prodding, sparking, and arguing over. When he throws the switch, high voltage leaps across the tube's electrodes, and a faint greenish light stirs inside the glass. This is ordinary work. Dozens of laboratories in Germany, England, and France run the same experiment on the same November nights. Nobody expects a revolution from it. The tube glows, the coil hums, the professor takes his notes, and physics continues its patient march. But tonight, something in this darkened room is about to behave in a way no textbook allows. A screen no one is watching will begin to shine. A material that stops all visible light will fail to stop something else. And a cautious man who never rushes will be forced, against every instinct, to doubt his own eyes. The ordinary evening is about to break physics wide open, and it begins with the tubes themselves. To understand what Röntgen found, you have to understand the tube. In the 1850s, the German glassblower Heinrich Geissler learned to pump most of the air from a sealed glass vessel. Seal two metal electrodes inside, connect them to a high-voltage induction coil, and the near vacuum lights up in ghostly color. By the 1870s, the Englishman William Crookes and the German Johann Hittorf had pushed the vacuum far deeper, and something stranger appeared. From the negative electrode, the cathode, an invisible stream flowed in straight lines, casting sharp shadows and making the glass fluoresce where it struck. Physicists called them cathode rays. Nobody agreed what they were. Crookes argued they were a fourth state of matter, a stream of charged molecules. German physicists, led by Heinrich Hertz and his student Philipp Lenard, insisted they were waves in the ether, like light. The debate had run for 2 decades. Lenard had even cut a thin aluminum window into a tube, letting the rays escape a few centimeters into open air, where they glowed on a coated screen before fading. The rays were real, but fragile, short-ranged, and stopped by almost anything. Röntgen, at 50, entered this crowded field late and deliberately. In the autumn of 1895, he set out to repeat the experiments of Lenard and Hertz to see the faint fluorescence for himself. To do that, he needed darkness and control. Stray light from the glowing tube would drown out the delicate glow he was hunting. So he did something meticulous and, in hindsight, fateful. He cut a shroud of black cardboard and wrapped it snugly around the entire tube, sealing every gap so that not a single flicker of visible light could escape. He tested the shroud first in the dark. He switched on the coil. The cardboard held. No light leaked through. Satisfied, he prepared to bring his fluorescent screen close to the aluminum window, exactly as Lenard had done. The tube was covered. The room was black. Everything was ready for an ordinary confirmation of known physics. Then, from the wrong side of the room, something began to shine. It was Friday, the 8th of November, 1895. The room was dark, the tube sealed in its black cardboard shroud, the induction coil crackling with each discharge. On the bench, a meter or so away, lay a small paper screen coated with barium platinocyanide, a chemical that glows when struck by cathode rays. Röntgen had set it aside for later. It was not yet in position. He was checking his covered tube in the darkness, making sure no visible light escaped. Then he saw it. Off to the side, well beyond the reach of any cathode ray, the barium screen was shimmering with a faint green light. Each time the coil fired, the screen flickered. Each time it stopped, the glow died. The two events were locked together. Something from the tube was crossing the room and lighting the screen, but cathode rays could not do this. Lenard's rays died within centimeters of air. This screen sat nearly a meter away, and the tube that fed it was wrapped in cardboard that blocked all light. Röntgen did what a careful man does. He picked up the screen and carried it farther back, 2 meters. It still glowed. He turned its coated face away from the tube. It still glowed. He knew, with a physicist's certainty, that no known radiation behaved this way. For a moment he doubted his own senses, wondering if fatigue or an unnoticed leak was fooling him. He lit a match, checked the shroud, and ran the experiment again. The glow returned on command, faithful to every pulse of the coil. Whatever this was, it passed through solid cardboard, as if the cardboard were not there. It traveled far. It ignored the rules that governed every ray in his textbooks. Standing alone in the dark, Röntgen felt the ground of known physics tilt beneath him. Later he told a friend he had said nothing to anyone because he thought he might be going mad. He did not go home to dinner. He reached instead for more objects to place between the tube and the screen. Wood, a book, his own hand, beginning weeks of work no one would hear about. From that first glow, Röntgen vanished into his laboratory. For nearly 7 weeks, from early November into late December 1895, he all but lived there. He had a bed moved into the institute. He took his meals at the bench. Anna Bertha later complained that her husband had become a stranger, silent and remote, offering no explanation for his long absences. He confided in no one, wrote to no colleague, and published not a word. He was terrified, he admitted afterward, of fooling himself, so he tested everything. He slid objects between the covered tube and the glowing screen, and watched what the invisible rays would cross. A 1,000-page book, the glow barely dimmed. A block of pine 2 or 3 centimeters thick, the rays passed through. Sheets of hard rubber, thin aluminum, copper, each dimmed the screen by a measurable amount, and he learned that density, not chemistry, was what mattered. Thicker and heavier meant darker. Then he reached for lead, and the screen went black. Lead stopped the rays cold. He tried to bend them. He brought a magnet close, the same magnet that would sweep cathode rays aside like a hand brushing smoke. The new rays did not flinch. No magnetic field could deflect them. He tried to reflect them, to refract them through prisms, to focus them with lenses, as one would treat ordinary light. They refused. They cast shadows in straight lines, but obeyed none of light's other tricks. Most unsettling of all was the day he held his own hand between tube and screen. On the glowing surface he saw the faint outline of his flesh, and inside it, darker and sharper, the shadow of his own bones. A living man, looking at his skeleton while his heart still beat. He replaced the fluorescing screen with photographic plates, learning that the rays could be captured and kept, not merely watched. By late December, he had a mountain of results and a single stubborn problem. He had discovered a ray he could measure precisely, but could not, for the life of him, name. By the last week of December 1895, Röntgen had assembled a catalog of impossible facts. His new rays traveled meters through open air. They passed through wood, paper, cloth, rubber, and flesh, but were slowed by aluminum and copper and stopped dead by lead and dense bone. They darkened photographic plates. They made barium platinocyanide fluoresce. They cast crisp, straight-edge shadows. And they broke, one by one, the rules that defined every other radiation known to science. He held each property up against the physics of his day and watched it fail to fit. Light could be bent by a glass prism. These rays could not be refracted. Light and cathode rays alike could be reflected from surfaces. These could not be mirrored. Cathode rays curved obediently in a magnetic field. These ignored magnets entirely, marching straight regardless of the strongest field he could apply. They were not light as anyone understood light, not cathode rays, not any charged stream. They matched nothing in the catalog. Faced with a phenomenon he could measure to the millimeter but could not classify, Röntgen refused to guess at a mechanism he had not proven. He would not call them ether waves as Hertz might have. He would not call them particles as Crookes might have. Instead, he borrowed a habit from mathematics, where the symbol for an unknown quantity, the thing you solve for but do not yet know, is the letter X. He named his discovery X-strahlen, X-rays. The name was an honest confession. Here is something real, and I do not know what it is. The humility in that single letter would outlast every theory of the day. Others across Europe soon called them Röntgen rays in his honor, but the professor himself preferred the blunt X, and it stuck. He now had the rays, their properties, their name, and photographic proof. What he did not yet have was the one image that would carry this quiet discovery out of his laboratory and around the world, an image made not of wood or metal, but of a human hand wearing a wedding ring. On the 22nd of December, 1895, Wilhelm Röntgen brought his wife Anna Bertha Ludwig down into the basement laboratory of the Physical Institute in Würzburg. For 6 weeks he had worked alone, trusting no one with the invisible rays. Now he needed a hand that was not his own. He seated Anna at the bench, laid her right hand flat on a wooden cassette holding a photographic plate, and switched on the covered cathode ray tube. Then he asked her to hold perfectly still. For 15 long minutes the tube hummed, and the rays poured through her flesh. Anna did not move a muscle, though the 15-minute wait unnerved her deeply. When Röntgen developed the glass plate in his darkroom, an image swam up out of the chemistry that no human being had ever seen before. There, in ghostly gray and black, were the 4 slender bones of her fingers, the knuckles, the long shafts of the metacarpals, and floating around one finger, the dense opaque ring of her wedding band. The soft tissue had almost vanished, reduced to a faint halo. The skeleton stood plain. Anna stared at the picture of her own hand, stripped to bone, and recoiled. "I have seen my death," she is said to have whispered. She refused ever to enter the laboratory again. For Röntgen, the plate was proof. For his wife, it was an omen, a living hand rendered as a corpse's frame while the heart still beat above it. He labeled the exposure, dated it, and understood that he now held something no argument could dismiss. A magnet could be doubted, a fluorescent glow could be a trick of tired eyes, but a photograph of the bones inside a living woman's hand, ring and all, was undeniable evidence that his rays passed through the human body and drew what lay hidden beneath the skin. He had at last his proof. What he did not yet have was a way to tell the world without being called a madman, and the clock was running down on 1895. On the 28th of December, 1895, Röntgen walked a handwritten manuscript to the Würzburg Physical Medical Society and submitted it for publication. He titled it with deliberate restraint, Über eine neue Art von Strahlen, on a new kind of rays. It ran barely 10 pages, 17 numbered observations, no grand theory, only what he had measured. The society printed it at once, and Röntgen paid to have off-prints made. On New Year's Day, 1896, he mailed those reprints to the leading physicists of Europe, to Franz Exner in Vienna, to Lord Kelvin in Glasgow, to Henri Poincaré in Paris, and with several he enclosed the photographs. That single mailing was the spark. Exner showed the images to friends in Vienna. One of them was the son of the editor of Die Presse, On the 5th of January 1896, the Vienna newspaper broke the story to the public, and within days the wire services carried it across the continent and under the Atlantic. By the 6th of January, the London Standard had cabled the news around the world. Within weeks, the story appeared in more than 1,000 newspapers and magazines. The image of the skeletal hand, bones and wedding ring was reproduced everywhere, and it did what no equation could. It made an invisible discovery visible to ordinary people. Crowds lined up at shop windows displaying the pictures. Showmen offered to photograph the bones of paying customers. Anxious citizens wrote to demand X-ray-proof underclothing to protect their modesty. In the first year alone, some 49 books and pamphlets and over 1,000 papers on X-rays poured from the presses. No scientific discovery had ever spread so fast. There was no radio, no television, only the telegraph and the printing press. Yet Röntgen's rays circled the Earth in under a month. A 50-year-old professor who had worked in silence and secrecy was suddenly the most famous scientist alive, besieged by reporters he did not want. And while physicists puzzled over what the rays were, another profession had already seen exactly what they were for and reached for them within days. The doctors did not wait for the physicists to explain anything. Within weeks of the news, hospitals in Vienna, Berlin, and London were building their own tubes and pointing them at broken bodies. On the 11th of January 1896, a doctor in Birmingham used the new rays to locate a needle lodged in a woman's hand before surgery. In Montreal that February, physicians imaged a bullet buried in a patient's leg and cut straight to it. Suddenly, a surgeon no longer had to probe blindly through flesh. A fracture could be seen, aligned, and set with certainty. A swallowed coin, a shard of glass. A bullet could be pinpointed and removed. When war came, in the Sudan, in Greece, and soon on the great battlefields of Europe, X-ray units followed the armies. Marie Curie herself would later fit 20 motorcars with X-ray equipment and drive them to the front, where more than 1 million wounded soldiers were examined by the rays she called Les Petites Curies. Medicine had gained an eye that could see through skin. But there was a price, and the earliest pioneers paid it in their own bodies. No one understood that the rays that revealed bone were also burning tissue. Experimenters who held their hands in the beam for hours to test the tubes developed reddened skin, then blisters, then ulcers that would not heal. Thomas Edison's assistant, Clarence Daly, worked so long with the tubes that his hands and arms were ruined. Both were amputated, and in 1904 he died, often called the first American killed by X-rays. Others lost fingers, developed cancers, and went to early graves, their deaths slowly teaching the world that this miraculous light carried an invisible poison. The lesson was written in scarred hands and shortened lives. The same radiation that could save a soldier could kill the doctor who wielded it carelessly. Yet the discovery itself was never in doubt, and its author remained apart from the frenzy, patenting nothing, selling nothing. As the century turned, the world prepared to honor the quiet man from Würzburg with a prize that had never been given before. In 1901, the will of the Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel came to fruition, and the first Nobel Prizes were awarded. For physics, the choice of the inaugural laureate was almost inevitable, Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, for the discovery of the rays that now bore his name. On the 10th of December 1901, the 5th anniversary of Nobel's death, the prize was announced, 50,000 Swedish kroner, and a place at the very head of the discipline's history. Röntgen, true to character, did not travel to Stockholm to give the customary lecture. He accepted the medal and the money, then quietly donated the entire cash award to his university at Würzburg for scientific research. He would keep none of it. More striking still was what he had already refused. From the first days of fame, industrialists had pressed him to patent the X-ray tube, to license the process, to grow rich on a discovery the whole world suddenly wanted. He declined every offer. Röntgen believed that his discovery belonged to humanity, that no one should stand between a physician and the tool that could save a life. He took out no patent, collected no royalty, and asked for no fee. Because he refused to own it, X-ray technology spread without restraint into every hospital on Earth, and the man who could have become one of the richest scientists in history died in 1923, nearly bankrupt, his savings destroyed by the inflation of the First World War. He left behind no fortune, only the rays and the countless lives they would go on to save. A century later, his gift is everywhere. In the chest films that catch tuberculosis, the mammograms that find tumors early, the CT scanners that map a stroke in seconds, the airport scanners and the dental clinics, and the operating theaters that all trace their lineage to one covered tube and one glowing screen in a darkened Würzburg laboratory. He had not been looking for it. He had been studying cathode rays on an ordinary November evening when a screen across the room began, impossibly, to shine. From that single, unbidden flicker, an entire era of seeing inside the living body was born. One accidental glow rewrote modern medicine.